Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of CyberTitan 5. Today is our Industry Speaker Summit. So CyberTitan itself is run through the Information and Communication Technology Council, and I'd like to take this time to acknowledge that ICTC's head office is in Ottawa and is built on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe peoples. Yesterday was very exciting to watch our 11 teams compete. The energy was excellent, and I'm very, very proud of all of our teams. It was given some sneak peeks throughout the competition, and a lot of the teams are very close in rankings. It's nice to see that our teams are on the same skill level. I think all of the teams should be really proud of wherever you've placed in the top 11, as everyone put in a huge effort yesterday. The results will be released tomorrow during our awards ceremony, so please join us then. For today, for questions, please either use the YouTube chat for our viewers, and the teams themselves can use the YouTube chat or the Discord channel. I've put a note in there for the teams. So I will relay questions at the end of each presentation. Today, we're going to have 4 groups of industry speakers for you. We're going to kick off things with Field Effect. So please welcome Alana Lapena and Earl Official. Alana is a threat risk intelligence lead at Field Effect. Her previous experience includes various intelligent functions in the financial sector and the community security establishment. Earl's the head of data analytics at Field Effect. He has 19 years of experience in cybersecurity and data analytics, including conducting operations and developing analytics, and years working at strategic level as a manager within the Government of Canada. Alana and Earl, welcome.
Hi, my name is Elena, and I'm a security and risk intelligence lead at Field Effect Software. Our company is headquartered in Ottawa and was founded in 2016 by cybersecurity veterans who helped shape Canada's cybersecurity strategy and other national level cybersecurity policies. We are only a few years in the making, but thanks to a very diverse and passionate group of people working here, we have now expanded into a global cybersecurity company, providing intelligence-grade protection for businesses of all sizes. We have 24/7 operations, providing threat monitoring and protection, incident response, security training, compliance, and consulting products and services with offices in Canada, the UK, Australia, and employees working remotely and in our offices throughout the globe. We have a dynamic mix of people of all ages, genders, cultural, and career backgrounds. And this diversity is what makes our workplace a challenging and exciting environment, and ultimately contributes to our success as a company. Today, you will see this kind of diversity all throughout the cybersecurity industry. In the early days of cybersecurity, those joining the field would often come from IT background. Then, because in order to understand how to protect technology, you need to know how that technology works. A lot of focus in cybersecurity was on research and was mostly theoretical in nature. Amateur hackers were doing it for fun and often were able to break into large organizations with very little effort. But in the past 2 decades, technology has been advancing at the speed of light, and it's now part of everything we do, including our work, our sleep, our leisure activities, part of our food production, our security, and many other aspects of our lives. You may not imagine the world without the internet because it came about before you or even some of your parents were born. But before internet, people were never connected like they are now and never had access to as much information as they do now. It seems like technology made our life easier than that of any other generation that came before these advances, but it also made us vulnerable like never before. With a few clicks and little effort, malicious actors are now able to destroy companies, shut down hospitals, empty bank accounts, and even carry out wars. This makes the work of today's cyber practitioners a lot more complicated than before. 20 years ago, being a good coder and having a degree in IT were a prerequisite to enter this field. But today, having that is not enough to deal with an increasingly changing cybersecurity landscape. Today, cyber defense companies such as Field Effect employ people from a variety of different disciplines to ensure that every angle of cybersecurity is covered. We have specialists in various streams who all play an important role in what we produce and how we protect our clients and partners. This includes incident response and digital forensic analysts, cybersecurity analysts, tradecraft analysts, system administrators, training authors, policy analysts, infrastructure and system support staff, security researchers, sales engineers, product designers, engineering and operations support, developers, marketing and PR specialists, administrators, copywriters, and executives. People often ask me questions like, how does one start a career in cybersecurity? Or what do you study to work in cybersecurity? And in my opinion, there's not one single factor that will ensure your entry into cybersecurity. I have a degree in international relations and also studied corporate communications and languages. I was also a self-taught web designer and worked in cybersecurity in federal government. This background helps me analyze information coming from sources in foreign languages and connect international political events to the events on our clients' networks. And I always tell my son, who will be starting high school this year, instead of focusing on the kind of profession you'd like to pick, find something that you're good at, something that you're passionate about, and something that you can do all day long because you spend most of your time at work. You may like coding or reading about politics, history, technology, doing research, investigating mysteries and crime stories, or solving mathematical problems and working with data, or learning foreign languages. All of this can play an important role when you enter this field and will make you successful in it. Your generation has grown up knowing technology from the very beginning. So you also have access to more information than all the previous generations before you. So I believe that you're already better prepared and will have a much better start to your career than generations of cyber practitioners before you. Earl, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Elena. Hi, everybody. I'm Earl. Thanks for inviting us in to chat today. Like Elena said, I have a non-traditional entry, I would say, into cybersecurity as well. And I've been doing it now for almost 20 years, which is kind of terrifying when you think about it. And in fact, I am fortunate enough to also be older than the internet. So as Elena said, everyone here is arriving at a time really when I would say it couldn't be better for your opportunities to learn and to gain experience. The great thing about cybersecurity that I found is that it's opened up an enormous amount of opportunities to learn both technical and non-technical skills. And a big part of my requirement to learn came by way of my entry into the field. So around the turn of the millennium, when I left university, my plan was to go to law school. And instead, I joined the Canadian federal government in an intelligence capacity, which quickly transitioned into now what is more formally known as the cybersecurity domain. And in that regard, I came in with a political science and English background, having studied transnational corporations and development, but had an aptitude for technology and myself was self-taught as a coder very lightly around that time, and had the benefit of being able to find my way through a whole bunch of technical training of the sort that these days, 15 or so years later, you can find with a click on YouTube. I remember the early days of learning what packet capture was and having to read manuals from Unix explaining it. These days, with a click or two, you can find innumerable walkthroughs of every element of Wireshark or any other analytic tool that you might, which I would have killed for many, many years ago. All that to say, the pathway into cybersecurity, I think, myself and those that the many people who I know in the industry would say has been great. Whether we came in as an engineer or as a computer scientist or a political scientist or a communications person or a product person, the space has done us all very well. And it's afforded an incredible amount of opportunity to get to work with great and interesting people, and to get to learn great and interesting things. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about is some of the breadth of what we call cybersecurity, and in particular, the type of work that falls underneath that range. And I've had the benefit of being able to experience a lot of that and learn a lot about those things, a lot of self-taught learning and some formal learning. But I just wanted to kind of talk to you guys about some of the work kind of scenarios and some of the skills that relate to it across that spectrum. So right now in the news, you're no doubt seeing things about Russia-Ukraine conflict, and we've all heard about terms like cyber warfare. You've also probably heard about ransomware and cybercrime and ransomware gangs and terms like that. And it's a really interesting time because for the first time, we've seen groups like that active in a political sense. So you might have heard of the Conti ransomware gang as an example, and you've probably heard of Anonymous, the hacking group. And interestingly, those are two groups that have chosen sides in a sense in a geopolitical context, which is interesting. And that's a part of the cybersecurity domain that people like Elena and I get to dabble in, spend time researching, and have been able to spend many, many years coming to understand really well at a geopolitical level. Underneath all of those happenings are still technical teams doing technical operations, whether they are nation state actors of the sort that you've probably heard called APTs or advanced persistent threats, or whether they're ransomware gangs. There's a whole funnel down of layers to be explored. And if you're an engineer or a computer scientist, you might find yourself sort of moving down one path of investigation. If you are a criminologist, as an example, or a political scientist, you might find yourself going down another channel of investigation. And all of these paths are, first of all, super interesting, super rich areas of investigation. But like Elena mentioned off the start, they're great spaces for people to find where their interests are and where their strengths might lie. So for example, I'm not a really good programmer. In fact, I'm a high liability programmer, but I'm really, really good at what we call open source research. And I've spent quite a bit of time doing research in what you might have heard as the dark web, all related to ransomware gangs and their operations. And so my skill set has taken me down that path. But along the way, I've been able to work with engineers and technologists who have gone down other paths. So as an example, the Conti ransomware gang, unfortunately for them, but fortunately for us, had a big source code leak a while back. And since then, they've had other leaks of their internal communications. So the code leaks, as one example, if you're a technologist, that's an area where you can go in and look at the actual code that the ransomware gang has utilized. So you might be interested in reverse engineering software, vulnerability research, sort of adjacent to that. And there are many, many examples of research in each of those spaces. The Conti one is just interesting because it's happened recently, and it gives us a peek into the technical operations of a gang like that. In parallel, there was also a big leak of their internal chat, which for people like myself, Elena, and many of our other colleagues in the industry is really, really interesting insight into how these gangs, really their businesses, quite frankly, how they're organized and how they operate, who's who in terms of roles and responsibilities. And it's allowed us to sort of see organizationally what's connected. So they actually have coders who develop the tools that they'll use. They have what are called access brokers that they might engage with, who are people who specialize in first gaining access to a network and then handing that access over to another person who's going to go and do their business with it. They even have communications people who interact with their victims and negotiate the terms of ransoms and those kinds of things. Getting insight into that side is rare, and it's been deeply exposed in the Conti gang example quite recently. So it's fun to talk about. Really, the point that I wanted you guys to take is that there's a whole bunch of interesting work and work opportunities and associated skills in that space. As it relates to kind of work more recently, we've been doing things like incident response. This is an area where myself and many others had not a great degree of familiarity. Managing an incident, sort of a crisis scenario. Perhaps some of the exercises that you guys are going through these days have a similar feel. There's a time pressure. There's a challenge, probably a technical challenge that needs to be solved, and some level of organization of the people involved in solving it that also needs to take place. So all of these things are a part of the cybersecurity domain. And so we have case managers who will help when an incident begins and help manage the interactions with the client, who might be non-technical, who might not even understand things like IP addressing, as an example. And so we have the challenge and the opportunity to communicate and educate clients as well. So we actually spend quite a bit of time helping bring up the knowledge of our clients and our partners who we're working with across that base as well. So whether you're specialized in one domain or the other, you're always kind of close to and certainly aware of the range of work going on in the cybersecurity space. At Field Effect, where I am, and at companies like us, and in the government and similar organizations where we're trying to protect the networks of our clients and others, we bring together all of these roles in a really interesting combination that extends from understanding what the threats are out there in the world. So security intelligence, like Elena mentioned, and she's deeply involved in, plays a critical role in us understanding sort of the nature of the cyber threat landscape. What are bad guys up to? What tools are they using? What information can be shared around those. And all of that feeds into a set of teams that build analytics and detection capabilities on top of our technology. So this is where engineering and computer science come into play, where I have spent the bulk of my career working with a combination of data scientists and analysts of a whole bunch of different sorts. And all of that leads out to notifications and actions that we take on behalf of our clients. So you can think of a scenario, let's use a ransomware scenario as an example, where hopefully our security intelligence work has kept us informed of the landscape out there, and we've built detection capabilities to watch out for these things, but occasionally they sneak through. Or social engineering is involved, which is another fun part of cybersecurity. If you're not familiar with, you should check into that later. And in any case, all of the information that comes in is fed into the analytics, the monitoring that takes place. So you can imagine yourself in that mix in some fashion, and ultimately actions are taken on behalf of clients. So we might see an attempt to compromise a network that we block at a perimeter device. Maybe a firewall, maybe there's an endpoint agent, a tiny piece of software that we've deployed on a device that gives us some control. And we have people involved across that chain, from the security intelligence, feeding information in, building capabilities, actually executing those capabilities on behalf of clients, and then interacting with the clients on the back end. So providing reports, meeting with clients and talking with them about what we've observed, what we've protected them from, and those kinds of things. There's one other piece that I think is fun to talk about and is a little bit of a departure, but it's related, which is that in this space, there's a lot of opportunity to interact with clients or partners, depending on the nature of the business you're in really interesting ways. So just this morning, I took part in a tabletop exercise, like a role-playing game exercise, where we walked through a simulated incident to test incident response for a financial organization. And so it was really interesting to get to watch a boardroom, basically, of executives sort of play through the scenario that we had created for them. And as we were doing that, help them understand the risk, the nature of the threat, the best path for response, and the implications for the decisions that they were making along the way. And in parallel, we got to learn a whole bunch about how these financial institutions operate and how they move money from bank to bank and those sorts of things. So the point that I wanted to make there was that cybersecurity has also given us all a great opportunity to learn about other areas, other domains that we wouldn't normally have. So we've worked, as Elena mentioned earlier, hospitals, many different healthcare organizations. We've learned a great deal about not only the nature of their networks. So if you're interested in networking, cybersecurity gets you right into that space. So learning about the networking in an operating room, all the way through to how the SWIFT banking system, so that's the system for like international money transfers, how that was used by North Korean hackers to steal money from a bank in Bangladesh. All of that sort of space for learning is opened up because cybersecurity is such an omnipresent issue these days. Certainly in the space of critical infrastructure, it's a hot topic. It relates closely to a lot of what we see and hear on the news. Financial institutions and others hold a lot of our personal information. So us as individual citizens should be at least aware of cybersecurity and have it on our mind. All of that to say, the opportunities there are basically endless, and the pathways in are similarly wide open. I feel like I've spoken quite a lot, and perhaps there might be some questions. Oh, sorry.
All good.
Thanks, Sheena.
So just checking everything, and I don't see any questions on our end. So if the students do have any, they're here and engaged, but I don't think we have any questions yet. So excellent. So is there, we can wrap up now if you guys would like, or if there's any.
Oh, no, yeah, thanks so much. Well, thanks for having us. Elena, yeah, to you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
No problem. So I do have one. How often do you use those tabletop scenarios?
Oh, very often. Not only because there's a client, like a demand for them, there's many demands for these sorts of things. In the space of cybersecurity, there are even like governmental regulations that require organizations sort of exercise and have in place certain levels of controls. And so part of that might be that. We also do simulations of social engineering or spear phishing campaigns. So we will do open source research on a company, we'll prepare as though we were the attacker, and we will simulate an attack on them and try and get their users to open and click our emails. And we will simulate as though we were stealing their credentials. So these sorts of simulations are very routine and a super fun part of the work.
Awesome. And is that something that every business would do?
No, definitely not. I mean, not to say that it's only our own for sure, but it's a core part of what we knew from the beginning we wanted to incorporate. So learning and exercising sort of, repetition is really, really important in cybersecurity. The space changes constantly, like the nature of the threats, not at a fundamental level, they're financially driven primarily, but the technology changes, right? So it's very important to exercise and practice. And so simulations are a really, really useful way to do that.
Awesome. I think we might have one more question, so we'll just give it a second here. I see someone's typing. But in the meantime, thank you very much for both coming on. That was some excellent information. I'm sure our students have some things to think about their potential future options for sure. Okay, we have one more. So how would transitioning to a cybersecurity/networking career now differ from before, i.e. before COVID or 10, 20 years ago?
Transitioning from networking to cybersecurity?
Maybe.
Well, in general, access to the domain of cybersecurity, I would say, has just simply gone up. So not only can you learn more about whatever might interest you in that space, but if you've already have some level of expertise, like in networking as an example, leverage that as your base. So you can begin with network sensors and network-based detections, just as an example of building up capability in that space.
And what about school to work? So from training to workforce.
My experience there is highly unusual. However, as a manager over many, many years, I've always had great experience with young people coming out of co-op-based programs who've had the opportunity to work in some organizations. I think that paves the way a little, maybe a little more easily. Any sort of work experience or exposure to simulations like these sorts of exercises that you can point to as practical experience is fantastic.
Awesome. We have a couple.
I think it's also most workplaces taking new people out of school, but there's no really expectation that you know everything. I think what most employers are looking for is intellectual curiosity and really your ability to learn and being curious about the world. But I don't think anybody is expecting you to be, fully prepared for the job that you will be doing.
Okay. And do you think you'd have to do university to go work into cyber?
Not necessarily. I don't think so. I know many people who came out of college, and I actually know a few who got a job straight out of high school. Like I've met a person who joined federal government when he was 18. He was an amateur hacker and won many various competitions and had the skill, and he was picked for a job that usually requires a university degree, but it really all depends.
I have two more questions left. So does Field Effect supply interns? Like, do you guys have, would that be an option for some of these students in the future?
We have. I don't know the full details off the top of my head, but we could find out.
For sure. Perfect. And then I guess the last one, what is your number one piece of advice for aspiring cybersecurity professional?
Do you want to go first, Elena?
Sure. I think I covered that in my presentation, but I think just being very open-minded and, not being limited to coding and, the traditional cybersecurity things, just, being open to the world, being curious about the world, and then knowing as much as you can and learning as much as you can.
Yeah, I couldn't say anything better than that.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think that brings us to the end. So thank you so much both for attending and for Field Effect for being our development partners. So thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Then we'll move on to our next presentation. So I'd like to welcome the team from KPMG. So please welcome Melissa Parsons and Pavan Chandler. Melissa is a cybersecurity manager at KPMG Risk Consulting Advisory practice based in Ottawa, Ontario. Melissa has led many cybersecurity projects, assessments, and audits across a range of sectors, including technology, financial services, not-for-profits, higher education, healthcare, just to name a few. Pavan is a senior manager at KPMG in Canada's cybersecurity practice, where he provides leadership over a wide range of cyber defense service areas, including pen testing, vulnerability and configuration manager, and more. So please welcome Melissa, Pavan, team.
Hi, thanks very much, Tina. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah, great.
Okay, so just wanted to congratulate, first of all the students, and can you see my screen actually that I'm sharing also? Okay, perfect. There we go. All the students, individuals that made this event possible. Kudos to you. Big pat on the back, round of applause. So just to kind of set the stage here, KPMG Global Cybersecurity Practice, we have only managed to kind of achieve our sort of status, if you will, and being ranked as one of the #1 professional services firms in cyber through the hard work of our 3,500 professionals globally that we work with to provide these services across the world. And there's just a couple of quick stats there. Specifically here in Canada, our core areas of practice, major hubs are Calgary, Vancouver, Victoria, and Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and Halifax. But we have many other member firms in between from coast to coast. I think there was a question earlier too about sort of education and certification. So typically, a lot of our cybersecurity pros either strive for or have certifications such as the CISP, and this is through ISC². It's the Certified Information Systems Security Professional. More on sort of the offensive side is the OSCP, which some of you might be familiar with. So that's the Offensive Security Certified Professional, and a few other specializations listed there. So across coast to coast, we've got 200 plus dedicated cyber professionals doing massive hiring sprees, and then 400 plus technology risk professionals. So, and we do work with across a lot of different service lines as well with our clients to provide these services. So here's just a few of like our core services. And then keep in mind that even, you know, in security operations or even cyber response, there's a bunch of listings of different services that we talked about, tabletop exercises that we provide in addition to, you know, cybersecurity response, breach response, that sort of thing. So I'm going to set the stage, now that I've set the stage for sort of what the firm does as a whole, which my colleagues Pavan and Todd will kind of come back to more on the technical note. I want to kind of share with you a little glimpse of my journey of how I got here today and to speak with you. So this image doesn't really resonate with me. Although, to be honest, I think it represents what most people think of when you say you work in cybersecurity, especially my neighbors. They're wondering what I'm doing locked up in my condo all day on my computers. And if it does resonate with you or anyone else, that's okay too. So for myself and quite a few other cyber leaders I've worked with over the years, and some that I currently work with, we took a really roundabout way to get here. And also, you know, we enjoy a lot of traditional right brain activities that maybe some don't really see as, you know, a techie type of activity, you know, such as creative, you know, arts and that kind of thing. So again, this is maybe not what's expected. I don't eat, sleep, and breathe tech, but it doesn't make me any less passionate about my career and the type of work I do. In fact, I would argue that it's almost like a little vacation from some of those different areas in my mind and helps keep me balanced and relaxed and healthy to focus on cyber risk-based engagements with my clients. So I'm going to go a little deeper still, and I'll give a few more examples of my journey that might be a little bit hard to believe given, you know, again, the privilege I have today presenting to you on behalf of my firm. So here's just a little snapshot of some of the things I love. So I really didn't try too hard actually in STEM subject matters and subjects growing up because I had pretty low confidence. I think it was sort of deeply ingrained in me that from a young age that I could only excel in one area or be good at one thing. So for example, I had a lot of creativity and really enjoyed writing and visual arts and pottery and painting, that kind of thing. So this actually led me to going to university as a mature student in the arts and humanities much later on in life than many. I would definitely say I was a late bloomer in almost every sense. I really felt kind of discouraged and that it was too late for me for a lot of areas, just because I wasn't hitting traditional milestones around the same times that my peers were. And in some cases, and one I'll come back to later, one I hit it much earlier. But the struggle was real. I'm not going to lie. But one day, you know, I just decided to kind of let go this sort of comparison I had with others and holding me back. I really started realizing I had a lot of lame excuses. And it, you know, when I came to examine my life, I was like, this is not real. This feeling isn't fact, right? So this led to sort of an intense desire to make things better. But through that, I was definitely challenged. I was put down at times by colleagues, a couple family members, bosses, and relationships. And even once things kind of started looking up, I lived with this sort of intense looming feeling of dread and doom, especially when good things started to happen, because now suddenly I had something to lose, right? So some of you might be able to relate to one or two of these points here, or maybe more, or maybe some of you might have friends or family that would, but you know, at one point in your life or in your career, you're definitely going to cross paths with someone that feels this way or has been through this. So, you know, be kind and exercise empathy whenever possible, I think is really the key takeaway from this. So, but what did I get out of this? So, first of all, I can make a killer PowerPoint presentation and proposal. If I could toot my own horn here for a second. I really got a lot of good exposure to a wide range of industries and sectors that later I would work in cyber for, which is kind of funny and odd and awesome at the same time. You know, contracts, I did contracts first in tech support, service engineering, data integration, when just kind of trying to pay the bills and that kind of thing, even though I went to school for something completely different. A lot of what I did was self-taught until I was able to go back and do a college diploma in network security in my 30s. Then I worked as a DevOps engineer, actually, and a security analyst for a global communications company. And in order to land that job, though, I had to familiarize myself with tools and tech like AWS, Docker, Kubernetes. I had to become familiar with Terraform, Chef, Ansible, learn how to do Python scripting in Ruby. And none of that actually was covered in my program. So there was definitely a gap there that I wanted a certain type of job, and it had the cool factor. And so I wanted to teach myself how to do that. And I kind of won them over in the interview. So that worked out well. Then out of that, this kind of led me to go suit shopping at the Salvation Army and Value Village for this major opportunity I had joining KPMG as a senior consultant a few years ago. So that for me was a major game changer. And I think people have the perception that like you've been in this industry for, you know, over 8 years. It must have not been easy, but it must have been a certain lifestyle too, and to work at KPMG. But we all have different stories and different paths. And you know, in recent years, I've been able to buy a few choice things, you know, but for myself, but I had bigger and better priorities at the time. So maybe, you know, some of you here today might have some limiting beliefs that maybe you can't paint or do pottery because you want to go and study engineering in university. I would say do both, you know. Maybe you think, oh, okay, I'm not a leader because I'm shy, or, you know, I'm an introvert. First of all, I know a lot of introverted shy leaders, and just like anything, it takes practice. Maybe you're not comfortable, you know, using like Python or Java or whatever, but, you know, just in my experience, any sort of reoccurring limiting beliefs cause a lot of unwanted anxiety, and it takes a lot less energy to just absorb it and allow yourself to get more familiar with something so it bears less weight. That's sort of the takeaway from that. So yeah, why are you telling me all this? Well, again, it bears less weight, right? These are sort of things that maybe I would hide in the past or I'd be ashamed of. And now today I kind of celebrate them, and it really helps me feel grateful for how far I've come, what I've been able to achieve. And it's not a competition, guys. It's not a competition for how anyone had it, or, you know, I recognize my privilege, and I'm sure many others have it harder. You know, but again, it's what I got out of it, you know. So I was able to leverage my accumulative experiences. You know, you're always going to be stronger, braver, and smarter than you know. That's a cliche, but it's so true. And for those of you that do know it, maybe take a beat, you know, maybe just support and encourage another to share the spotlight or take the spotlight with you. Ask more questions or just listen. And if you don't, you know, if you don't have strong role models or mentors already, like definitely seek those out. It's a game changer. And there's lots of folks out there that are really willing to kind of like pass that on and carry that forward. And just remember, everybody's path looks very different, right? So let go of any sort of preconceived notions about what a cybersecurity professional is or what it looks like. So now to the cool things. I got to work with, and I get to work with a lot of cutting edge technology. When I first entered into DevOps and security, obviously it was much more hands-on. On the other side of the table now, I get to help some clients with some really complex stuff that they're trying to achieve, or that, you know, they're just trying to change or evaluate due to this type of exposure. You wouldn't know it, but in the last year, my team and I have worked with some really interesting companies to help them with their maturity in cybersecurity. Everything from sporting goods to most recently a brewery. So, you know, just everyone needs security now, right? And everything's automated. There's systems that manage everything. So we also get to work with some pretty big dogs that have, you know, a near monopoly in the market, which is always exciting. But due to confidentiality, all I can say is that many have headquarters in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we get to collaborate globally. So again, with clients, but also internally with colleagues through conferences, seminars, and like and peers too. So mentors and mentees globally, you know, reach out on LinkedIn again, like, you know, build your connections. Everybody's happy to kind of talk about what they're passionate about in their different areas of cyber, right? So, and of course, just being a panelist or an event speaker like here today is I think, you know, the most fun and I think the most rewarding experience that we can kind of get out of this. So whatever you get out of this today is yours and yours only. And, you know, it's going to look and feel different to everyone else, but I wish for you to have hope and dream big, have lots of success in life. If you're here, so you're already doing incredible things. So just making it here with the knowledge and skills you possess at such a ripe age is really amazing. There's no telling, you know, what tomorrow is going to bring. So just enjoy the ride, and maybe one day pass it on, you know, all these feels to another group of students like yourselves. And with that, I am going to next pass it over to my colleagues, and thank you for your time today. If you want to connect after the event, please feel free to reach out by email or on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. What a powerful story. I'm just sharing my screen here. Okay. Can everyone see that?
I don't think it's up just yet.
And obviously technical issues. Okay, I'll just share my screen. How about that, Todd? Can you see that?
Can see it. There we
Awesome.
go.
Okay, great. Well, let's jump into it. So Melissa did a bit of introduction to KPMG, talked about cybersecurity. We're going to talk about one very small part of the entire cybersecurity domain, but it's an important part that we think is the most fun part. Offensive security, pen testing, vulnerability assessments, all that fun stuff. So my name is Pavan Chandra. I'm a senior manager in Toronto.
With me is Todd Breacher. We're both in the offensive security practice here. We'll get into a little bit more about what that is in a moment. It's interesting. My journey into cybersecurity consulting started with me being a co-op in IT, in a consulting firm, but as a systems engineer, no consulting, no security, just pure systems engineering. But every day I used to work with consultants. I was supporting them, helping them, and I had no idea what they did, but it sounded really exciting, and I got really curious. Did some networking and ended up getting an interview, landing a job, and basically transitioning from a co-op in IT to a co-op in cybersecurity advisory. Didn't know what I was doing. I thought, who am I to call myself a consultant? I'm a co-op student, and even as a co-op student, they brand you as a consultant, and that's how you advertise yourself to clients. And it was a very scary experience. I very quickly realized that 50% of our job is basically to Google stuff. The other 50% is to then interpret and translate the Google results into something that a client can kind of understand. But it's been 8 years since then. Senior manager now, from a co-op now up to senior manager. Been a blast. I think sometimes people ask why consulting? Why get into consulting? Or people don't even know kind of what consulting is, especially when you're in school. My answer to that is really that if you're someone that loves nonstop change and challenge and growth, consulting is where you can get that. Thinking about where I could have gone instead. Getting all sorts of notifications. Think of where I could have gone instead, gone and worked for a big bank. I would have been stuck kind of doing one job all the time. Being a consultant allows me to work with all the banks, all the big companies in Canada, internationally sometimes too, and go into all those different firms and kind of see what they do, see what they don't do, and learn from it. So that's a little bit about me. Over to you, Todd.
I also had a bit of a non-traditional entryway into cybersecurity, and my background is actually in environmental toxicology, and I studied human and environmental health. I had a co-op experience in my post-secondary studies at University of Guelph that completely turned me off of the industry, and I found that pesticide risk assessment and toxicology consulting was not for me. I ended up, funnily enough, taking a sales job working for a cybersecurity company, kind of exploring my second interest in tech and security, and ended up just falling in love with the field. Tech is super cool. It's cutting edge. It's, really interesting and always stuff to learn. So I thought that it was great. And I ended up going to some of my more technical mentors at the company that I've been working with and basically saying, hey, where did you guys go to school? And ended up going back to school to get a technical background. These days, I specialize in offensive security. I work on Pavan's team, and I do a little bit of incident response, some strategy and governance consulting, and data protection stuff on the side as well. I also started as a co-op student. So if you guys have any questions about the pathway transitioning from school to work, both of us are great resources. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you guys have any other questions as well.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. So we thought we'd keep things kind of casual and short today. Really, we've got a couple stories we'll share about the work that we've done ourselves. But first, we'll kick it off with a demo of sorts. So Todd, maybe if you can indulge me in some audience participation.
Sounds good to me.
Silly question. What is this?
Looks like a lock to me.
Good answer. Gold star. What do we do with this? Like, what do we use locks for?
Well, we lock stuff up, right? I mean, you use that in like a gym locker or something, right?
Yeah, and so why do we lock stuff up though? Like, what are we scared of?
Well, so I mean, in a gym, like you want to keep your valuables safe, right? Like your phone, your keys, your wallet, things that matter, right?
Yeah, so absolutely right. We want to keep things are safe. We want to make sure it doesn't get broken in. We use a lock because it's hard to cut into, or it would take a lot of time to cut into, and hopefully someone observes someone doing some shady stuff and cutting locks in a gym or in a school or in a Best Buy or something like that. People, I'm sure, have heard of lock picks. You see it in the movie and lock picking. It works. It's not as fast as in the movies, but there is something I can show you. So this particular lock, it's a real lock. If you were here, I would pass it around. It is solid, very heavy. It's a very real lock, but it has one particular weakness. And if you can identify and exploit that weakness, you can essentially open the lock in about, I don't know, 0.75 seconds. So I'll kind of do that again. So take a little thing, little shim, insert it right in there, and then boom, it opens. Now, not all locks have this particular weakness, but most locks have a weakness. If you can identify the weakness and exploit the weakness, you might be able to get in. So what's the connection? Why am I talking about locks? Well, most organizations out there, they don't know how weak they are until they get hacked. So what we do as part of KPMG's cyber offensive security team is kind of go in and simulate the attackers to identify the weaknesses before the real hackers can identify them and get in and do all sorts of bad stuff. This results in us being able to help our clients prioritize and identify issues, prioritize those issues, and remediate those issues. So that's kind of a quick kind of a thing about that. But before we go on, I guess there's a
we want to give a quick disclaimer here. We got to be very clear. You know, we are trained professionals. We work under code of ethics with client consent. As we're sharing these stories, we really hope that this doesn't inspire you to go and try this at home. You know, really the only difference between a lot of what we do and, you know, what real world threat actors would do is a code of ethics and, you know, especially prior written and explicit legal consent granted by our clients to be conducting this kind of adversarial activity against their infrastructure and against you know, their people, their machines, and so on. So please don't try this at home. Don't be these guys.
Or if you want to do this stuff legally, find and you know, KPMG is not the only firm that does this. There's a whole bunch of people out there that do offensive security. Do it and do it legally. So Todd, maybe let's get started with some tales from the trenches.
Sure. So I want to start with a fun pen test that you know, I think was quite an interesting finding. You know, essentially KPMG was at one point contracted to do a pen test for a university. Essentially, it was what's called a black box external pen test, as in we have no visibility into the box, that we haven't been given any information about their infrastructure, their environment, and it was conducted from an external perspective, as in we don't have, you know, any accounts in the university. We are basically like a real world, totally third party threat actor, maybe somebody trying to go after the university for financial benefit or maybe political benefit or otherwise. Essentially, as part of this pen test process, one of the first things that you're going to be doing is scouring the internet for any kind of information and, you know, maybe password dumps and things like that. You know, has there ever been any services where maybe users at the university have signed up for their, you know, accounts on, you know, different platforms, things like PDF readers or whatever online? And are there any password dumps out there? So, you know, as part of that open source intelligence gathering that we had conducted, we did end up finding a number of old passwords. Some of them were related to professors. Once we had some passwords and some accounts, we did some research, figured out who's who, and, you know, thought maybe some of it would be kind of fun. For anybody doing any chemistry, you'll notice this is a nice little molecule here. Not sure if anybody recognizes this, but this is actually a caffeine molecule. Funnily enough, one of the professors and, you know, password and email combinations that we found was a chemistry prof who had this as their password. Kind of a neat thing, seeing something like this being related so closely to their field of study. But hey, it's actually, you know, not a bad password if you mix in some lowercase and maybe some symbols in the end there. Essentially, what happened with this pen test was we found some very good intelligence, and we did get some passwords that were relatively current. They weren't a, you know, a direct hit, so it wasn't like we found the passwords, tried them right away, and got in first try. Instead, we were able to basically take these passwords and build some mask attacks and password spraying attacks where we would attempt to authenticate with similar passwords and for a whole bunch of different accounts. And we did end up getting a hit. We were able to compromise an account that had yet to be deactivated for a recently retired professor. And essentially, there was a number of faculty only SharePoint locations and things like that that we were able to get access to from the outside. And in poking around, we did end up finding some domain admin credentials that were located in one of those faculty only SharePoint locations. It was a computer science faculty place. And so, I mean, I guess they needed some elevated privileges to be, you know, provisioning access and, you know, building different kind of infrastructure in their Office 365 environment. So we were able to definitely find some admin credentials lying around in a spreadsheet, and you'd be shocked at how regularly stuff like that happens. So start to finish, it was a pretty simple, straightforward engagement. I think that they were hoping that we were going to have less success than we did. Definitely saw some fun stuff with the passwords. And there was a couple of valuable lessons learned. We were able to definitely validate with the client that password complexity is really important. You really can't reuse your passwords. You shouldn't use common patterns either. In this case, we'd used a mask attack where we basically took, a list of passwords and kind of subbed in like an appended like value for like F 2022 would be like fall semester 2022, something like that. Slap that on the end of the passwords and test it, and that was what got us our hit, was creating one of those patterns, appending it to passwords, and doing the password spraying attack. The other thing is, obviously, don't store your passwords in insecure locations, especially not domain admin credentials. Passwords are very rarely stored in plain text by businesses or services that you use. You definitely shouldn't keep your own passwords in plain text or in insecure locations, like in a SharePoint location, or maybe in notes or something like that, like on your desktop on sticky notes. That's not very good practice. But yeah, professors and passwords, pen testing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So the next one that I'll talk about is physical security and a bit of social engineering. So for this one, we were engaged to basically attempt to gain physical access to a power plant. And so this was, physical social engineering. We could basically do whatever we need to do to try and get in. So it's quite a fun one. The area that this plant was located in, I'm in Toronto. It wasn't Ontario. It was somewhere else in Canada. But the area that was in had very poor cell reception. So what I did was did a couple things. One was I put on my high visibility vest, got my trusty clipboard, and then I wrote an email to myself, spoofed the email, and printed it out. And so in the email was basically an email. It was coming from a authority within the company, authorizing me to gain access for some important business meeting, whatever it was. I made some stuff up. I walked up to the gate and used that email to kind of get past and social engineer the guy at the gate, who happened to be a third party. So if you think about a power plant, there's multiple gates, multiple fences in to get physical access, and sometimes the outside perimeters is just it's manned by a third party security company. So the email looked official enough for them. They're thinking, well, we'll let them through. It seems okay, but someone on the inside is going to double check what this says, and it'll kind of be their responsibility. So I got in. From there, I'm kind of stuck in sort of no man's land between two fences or two sort of gated areas. But I got my high vis vest on, I got my clipboard. Essentially, I look sort of somewhat official, and I just walk around pretending like I'm taking notes, pretending I'm looking at fences and cameras and whatnots. Meanwhile, I'm basically going to the little buildings and trying all the doors. I found one that was unlocked. And unfortunately for them, that door led me to sort of a reception-ish office building of sorts. But what it let me get into was an area where there wasn't anyone inside, but they had a whole bunch of contractor access badges. So I acquired a contractor badge very easily, took that badge, realized that these are handed out to people driving in. So that was it. I basically packed up and left for the day. Came back the second day with my badge in my car. Beep, beep, went through both gates. It was amazing. I don't know if anyone's done lock picking, for example, maybe, but when you open your first lock and you get this massive rush, that's kind of what it felt like. So I was able to get past that second gate, parked my car, walked inside the plant. And so, yeah, I've got a high vis vest on, but underneath, I'm in sort of business attire. I'm coming from the office. Luckily, the first door I see once I enter is a PPE, personal protective equipment, like where they have the hard hats and the vests and the boots. So I basically put all that on and walked unobstructed through the entire plant, took pictures. Todd, you were talking about don't leave passwords in sensitive passwords in unsecure areas. This is a power plant. They're assuming physical security is key. And so walking around, I could actually see next to computers, they've literally written on the wall admin passwords, because they're just assuming you can't get past all the physical security controls, right? It's someone else's job. So to kind of cut this short, the lessons learned there is lock your doors. I don't know what happened. Maybe I got lucky. Maybe it was just that one day where maybe it was a new security guard and someone left that door unlocked, and it just happened to me and I was able to get in. But the reason we do these engagements and the reasons clients hire us is to identify these sorts of situations, to figure out what went wrong and make sure that it doesn't happen again. So I'll leave it with sort of that last lessons learned, where confidence, a smile, high-vis vest, and a clipboard can basically get you anywhere. Not that I'm recommending you do that. So that's kind of it for those two stories. I can't see the other screen, but basically it's Q&A time. I don't know if there's any questions, Sheena?
Oh, yeah. So we do have one question for all three of you, actually. So first off, I'll say thank you so much to all three of you. That was kind of hilarious and amazing. Those experiences are fantastic. So the question we have, so it seems like all of you have had a very unique entry into the field. Did you ever feel nervous or not really sure what the next step would be to take? And if you did, how did you find guidance about what to do / learn next?
So I would love to start this, because I think at one point I was literally, I was a university dropout, frankly. And I was so disillusioned with what I was studying that I genuinely did not know what I wanted. In taking a gap year and working for a year in a non-technical role within the cybersecurity industry, I initially thought, oh, well, I'll go back to school and get a sort of conventional computer science background, and then I'll specialize into security on my own time. What I didn't know then that I do know now is that there are a ton of specialized and topical relevant programs all across Ontario and the country that are excellent starting points for anybody interested in cyber, that will train you and give you the technical fundamentals to establish yourself in any role in the industry, whether it's in solutions engineering, architecture and design, red team, blue team, consulting, like whatever you're interested in, you can find a program, whether it's through universities, colleges, or whatever, that is going to give you everything you need to succeed. So yeah, I definitely didn't know what I wanted then. I thought, let's just do computer science and I'll do security on my own time. I think it's much better that I ended up, changing programs, shifting gears and going into something topical and specialized, like what I ended up in at Seneca.
Awesome. Pavan?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say that when I started, like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. I thought, okay, let me just try something and let me try and learn it. I think, sort of a tie into that question is sort of, what makes for a successful consultant? It's someone that's, passionate and wants to keep learning things. So that was kind of me. And when I realized I didn't know where to go further, asked for help, realized I don't like this work, can pivot. The beauty of a consulting gig is just it's project based. So, you really, whether you're liking it or you're not liking it, you kind of just, you've got an end in sight, and then you're going to be rolling over to the next project and the next project and the next project. And that really helps broaden kind of the direction you take.
Awesome. Yeah, Melissa?
I was just going to say, we actually just talked about this before this event internally, right, guys? About, because I have a full day of interviews on Thursday. So, and sort of what the criteria is and how that's changing. And I personally, I'm really an advocate for reducing barriers in cybersecurity. I really think that both myself and a lot of other leaders and my mentors too at the C-suite level, because I don't really believe that there's a shortage in cybersecurity. I think it's qualified, and those qualifications, right, are dictated by other people. So if we change the qualifications, we have more cybersecurity professionals. So, I think, again, it's just like that passion and that willingness to learn, right? And there's so much more focus now on soft skills and on communication and teamwork and projects, and especially in consulting, project management, that kind of thing is really like a key skill that we're looking for. So
awesome. So I do have one team on here who said they're going to buy some vests and see wwhere they can get.
Well,
make sure you ask for permission first. Don't tell them we told you to do it.
Yeah.
And then we have one more question. So have you ever been surprised by a client who's had very good security, good passwords, practices, or does almost everyone have a critical security issue?
So maybe I can start here as well, and I'm sure Pavan will add. there are plenty of engagements where, you know, from an external perspective, especially, there is not a viable foothold, and that is because, you know, the client has a hardened perimeter, and the expectation that you're going to get in every single time is frankly unrealistic. Um, but that's a good thing. In reality, the reason that we're here is to test and validate that the defenses they've implemented are doing their job. And so if we can't get in, you know, it's not as fun, but it is good news for the client, right? So that happens all the time. But there are just as many cases where we do get in. And that's why we're still in business. So.
Yeah, so the analogy I'd have there, and I don't know, it might not be the most apropos analogy. It involves roulette, but bear with me. So if you don't know what a roulette table is, it's a table with 36 numbers. And I know this is a horrible topic to be talking with students, but in the world of InfoSec, in the real world, when you have an organization, everyone has a finite number of resources. They've only got so much money to spend, so many people, so much time in a day, in a year. And so as a CISO, right, someone leading security for an organization, they look at their budget and they say, where are we going to put this money? We're going to put some of it on this. We're going to put some of it over there. We're going to put some of it over here. They could put a little bit over everything, or they could put a lot of it on certain areas where they feel like, multi-factor authentication, right? Many of you have probably heard about that. It's a big security control. It really helps beef up security. So maybe they put a lot of it on there. But our job as sort of the adversary simulation is to try and identify where are the gaps in that armor. Sometimes it doesn't happen right away. And like Todd said, sometimes it doesn't happen at all within the time sort of that we have for engagement. Because again, this is the company hiring us, they've only got a limited budget. So they can't afford to pay us for a 3-year engagement where we just spend 3 years trying to get in. Within the limited time, sometimes we do find clients that are hard to penetrate, but like Todd said, we're good at our jobs, so we usually find a way.
I think too, there was a really good point brought up earlier about sort of what the regulations were too, depending on the client and the industry and the sector. So and audits that they might be subjected to, different legal requirements, contractual requirements. So, sometimes MFA, multi-factor authentication, is a discretionary control. It's not mandatory. However, for another client, say that deals with credit cards, that is a mandatory control that they need to have in place as well. So when we're looking at controls across the board, even if we're not trying to penetrate them technically, and we're doing even assessments, that can look different. So good could be different depending on the standard and the approach that we're taking for the type of client as well.
To bring things back to the disclaimer that we provided, the idea that we're working within a code of ethics, it is really important to establish as well that with every time that we embark on a penetration testing engagement, there are defined rules of engagement that say what we explicitly can and cannot do. So it may be too that the client does have weaknesses, but we can't exploit them. A very common one being social engineering. There's a lot of sort of ethical and moral considerations to engaging in social engineering to compromise a business. Can the employer put their employees in the line of fire for testing purposes? Like, that's a huge issue. And so very often we can't socially engineer, the people. And very often that's what bad guys would do. So there's a difference between pen testing and red teaming. It's not just about identifying and exploiting the weakness, but also what weaknesses are we really testing? It's all defined by the client and those rules of engagement. And we have to follow the rules.
For sure. Just like the students had to yesterday for the competitions.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. That was excellent. Super engaging. Also, in general, thank you to KPMG for coming in for our first place award sponsor. So thank you to everyone for today and KPMG in general. It was nice to have you all.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. So we were originally going to do a break, but I think we're just going to skip that. So next we have a team from Sophos, or a speaker from Sophos, I should say. So welcome Jonathan Pye. Jonathan is the Director of Technical Support Americas at the Ottawa office site leader at Sophos. Over the past 30 years, Jonathan has led several organizations, customer support teams, development groups, large IT projects on a variety of industries. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. Sophos is a proud sponsor of CyberTitan 5. And I'll start off with, just like the other presentations did, congratulations to all the finalists. I hope you had a great day yesterday. Let me pull up my screen here and start sharing. More steps than I expected. There we go. So hi, everybody. My presentation is about inside a cybersecurity company. So you heard in the other presentations some interesting stories and what they were doing. I'm going to do it from Sophos' standpoint. I never thought I would be a cybersecurity guy. I finished university back in 1986. We were barely using PCs in those days. You know, I had the two disks, the program disk and the data disk. And if you had said I'd be in cybersecurity back then, my first question would be, what's cybersecurity? It didn't really exist. You know, the first antiviruses came out around 1987 after I had left school. And that was really the start of cybersecurity in companies. I'm not a technical guy, never have been. Although I started my career as a programmer, I knew pretty early that I wasn't going to be doing that and kind of took a management path. I led development organizations, professional service organizations, and things like that. In the last 15 years, I've been leading support organizations. And now I'm leading support organization for a cybersecurity company. So this presentation might have a little more focus on support, but I'm going to talk about all different parts of Sophos. So I'll talk about who are we, what do we do, and then we'll talk a little bit about different types of jobs and careers that you can find in Sophos. So first off, who are we? Every company has a mission statement to help define who they are and what they do. So we protect people from cybercrime by developing powerful and intuitive products and services that provide the world's most effective cybersecurity for organizations of any size. Let's break that down a little bit. The first part says we protect people from cybercrime. That's what all my employees and myself do. We are the good guys. We wake up and we protect people from cybercrime. Then it talks about developing powerful and intuitive products and services. So our products are software, our products are firewalls, and our services are support, managed threat response that was discussed before. Rapid response is also another service. And then we have a SaaS offering as well, software as a service, and that's a little bit of both. And then at the end of the mission statement, organizations of any size. I'll talk more to that in the presentation, but we deal with small little companies to medium size to large. Here's our evolution. So Sophos has a rich heritage of internal innovation, as well as an exceptional track record with acquiring and integrating technology. So founded in 1985 in Abingdon, UK, Peter Lammer and Jan Rusks. In 1988, they got their first antivirus. Remember I said the first antiviruses came out in 87. Sophos had a checksum antivirus in 88, and then a signature-based antivirus in 89. And by 1996, they were voted the best small, medium-sized company in the UK and started the presence in the United States. Acquisition, as you can see, from 2003 to now, is basically the way we've been able to speed up our offerings and fill gaps in our product suites. So throughout those years, we've been able to get security policy and network access control functionality, data encryption and network security, UTM and Wi-Fi technology and network security, mobile security and mobile device management, both Android and iOS, NG firewall, UTM technology, SaaS, cloud-based web security, cloud-based email security. Now we have next generation malware detection software, security data analytics, machine learning based antivirus. So we continue to employ both build and buy strategies as a company. Where are we? Well, quick answer is everywhere. As you can see in the middle of the presentation there's a blue pin. That's Abingdon, head office. Not all our offices are even on this map. We have one in Cork, Ireland, Manchester. We're truly a global organization. Support, which I lead, is 24/7, 365 days a year. Cybersecurity does not sleep, but we do. We're truly a follow the sun model, and we overlap with all the different geos. So what do I mean by follow the sun? Ottawa, we start at 9 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. The UK is still doing support, and Europe for another 4 hours. At noon Eastern time, Vancouver comes on, and they work at the same time as us. We leave at 5 o'clock, and now we have Australia coming on. Manila covers them. Then India comes after Manila, and Europe takes on after that. And then we're back to Ottawa the next day. So that's what follow the sun is. Although our customers work all the time and cybersecurity doesn't sleep, our people are able to work regular hours out of a support organization. So there you can see in Canada, Ottawa and Vancouver, those are our two offices in Canada, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a while. Who do we protect? Quick answer, everybody. And that number is not wrong. 520,000 of the world's most demanding organizations. That's what I said. They were small, medium, large. You got a lot of small guys in there. Support people who work in support know what demanding means. With cybersecurity, you have to be good. And customers and partners expect and demand the best products and services. So we're always under pressure. In support, you know you've worked a good day. You're tired at the end of the day. It's a tough job to do. So again, on this slide, you can see big names, small names, a diversity of industries. So there's everything from Google, Five Guys, Krispy Kreme, the BBC, SAP, Toyota, and we do local Canadian businesses as well. For instance, in Vancouver, Vancouver Canucks are a customer of ours. The Vancouver Police Department is a customer of ours. So now let's talk a little bit about products and services. What is it that we actually sell? So our main separation of products is between network and endpoint. Okay, so on the network, we protect networks. We have XGS and SG firewalls, and the configuring of them. You can configure, web filtering, email filtering, and many other things. We also have Wi-Fi access points and switches, along with some other different types of hardware. Endpoint security, you probably know, but I'll just repeat it. Endpoints are anything kind of at the end of a network. So my laptop is an endpoint, desktop's an endpoint, server's an endpoint, my mobile phone is an endpoint. So our software is Intercept X. That's basically our endpoint solution. Helps to detect ransomware. It has a deep learning AI, does threat hunting, application web control, data loss prevention. The enterprise console can be on-premise, but it also can be SaaS, which I'll be showing you in the next slide as well. Data protection, full disk and file encryption. So in case my laptop is stolen, nobody can get in and see anything without the key. So Sophos Central, this is what I refer to as our SaaS offering. So with it, you can manage hardware and endpoints. So I can see a list of all the laptops in my company. What version of security software are they running? Has the person rebooted to make it active? Are there any warnings on any laptops? I can see that all from a enterprise console in our SaaS offering. Manage and configure firewalls. You can do that right from the central software as well. More and more things are going to the cloud. People were reluctant at first, obviously, in cybersecurity to go to the cloud, but it's strong, and more and more people are doing it now. Central email, also on Sophos Central. You can manage the email, the spam, phishing, blocking domains, blocking IPs, whatever you want to do on there. Another one we have is Phish Threat. Phish Threat is used to train employees on email safety. Basically, you train your employees, how to spot phishing attempts and spam and all that kind of thing. This is a software where you can create your own fake emails, send them to your employees, and see if they click on the links or not. If they click on the links, usually they'll go into some kind of remedial training to learn what not to click on again. Going to other services, technical support. So that, again, that's what I lead out of the Ottawa office, is technical support. So customers call us, customers may create a case in a portal, and we try to solve them. We're more of a break fix organization. So if the software is not working or the network is having problems due to the firewall, that's what we do. Managed threat and response, field effect, talked about that a little bit. Cybersecurity is increasingly complicated. Companies don't have the expertise in-house to deal with what they need to deal with now, and they can't afford the time or the money to do it. So we do it for them as a managed service. Rapid response is a part of managed threat and response, but it can also be engaged in an emergency. So if you don't have MTR, but you do have malware coming in or ransomware coming in, we can get engaged immediately and try to, stop the encryption of files, find out where it came from, get it fixed. So we have a really good rapid response team. Other service we have is professional services. So professional services is paid consultancy, usually for newer customers or complicated setups. And they can also provide best practices to a lot of our customers. So that's kind of it for the products. Now I'd like to see how that turns into different careers and jobs that can be performed out of Sophos. So here I'm talking about technical roles. So I'm not going to talk about, internal general roles, like HR and things like that. But let's keep a technical focus. And I'll start with what's in the support team. Again, most of these roles are going to be divided in two. They're either ESG or NSG, which is what we call endpoint security group, or the network security group. Kind of different skills in both of those groups. But the organizations are pretty much the same. So in support, there's 3 levels of support. Level 1 is what I would call our entry position. And these are the engineers who take phone calls from the customers or take cases from the portal. They're constantly working with customers, spending half the day on the phones, usually, and half the day doing casework. What we look for people coming into these positions, generally technical school degrees, but we also have university grads, and we get masters of engineering grads as well. It's really a starting position into a cybersecurity company. People don't stay in level 1 too long. They usually move on to another part or another group in the organization. Level 2 is the first level of escalation. Generally, it's somebody who's been in level 1 for a while. They're more technical and experienced with the products. And so that's level 2. So level 1, level 2, that's what I oversee out of the Ottawa office. Level 3 is the next level of escalation. These are really product experts. And they work closely with development. So if something's a bug, they can go straight to development and try to get it fixed as quickly as possible. In our organization, we call them global escalation support. Now, those people, again, probably getting promoted from level 2 as well. It's rare that we hire from the outside of this because a lot of it is our product specific, right? So you can only get that by working with the products. TAMs, these are technical account managers. That's another role. Customer facing, obviously. Usually growth from L2. L2s can get promoted into TAMs. A TAM will have 10 to 15 customers that they're managing the cases for, and they own kind of the customer satisfaction from a support standpoint. If a customer is spending a lot of money with us, we'll give the TAM for free. But you can purchase a TAM also, and which is not bad if you've got a large organization that's all over the place and you need somebody to help manage, the support cases with us. We also have a community and digital customer support team. We have a community that's online where our customers sign up. Our customers can ask questions. Our customers can answer questions of other customers. It's really a community for Sophos people and products and services. They also, our internal people will put blogs, they'll post blogs in the community. We have something that's called tech vids. Tech vids are kind of 5-minute little quick how-tos. How do I set up a network? How do I, fix this endpoint? So we have a group that does 5-minute tech vids, and they're very useful for our customers and partners. In fact, in our Ottawa office, we're building a new office in Ottawa. We're going to have a studio for that group, and they're going to film all of the videos from Ottawa. This group is also responsible for social media. So they're monitoring Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. People might ask questions there. People might put comments there. So they're constantly monitoring and interacting in those social media places. The people who go into that community in digital sport, again, usually went through L1 at the beginning. L1's where everybody starts because they get the best training. It's 12 weeks of training on our products before you become an L1. And so everybody going through that can then choose their path or career path after that. Tools and technology. So this is an organization within support that supports support. So they've got, they help us with our phone system. They give it modifications to our case management system. They help us with workforce management. So predicting how many phone calls we're going to get in a given day and how many people do we need on the phones. That's all done mathematically, and there's a model, and it's based on our targets. And so this group is the ones that give us the numbers, and then we just have to schedule them and make sure that we adhere to those schedules. Quality assurance and training. Quality assurance, we're talking engineer quality assurance. So this is not development quality assurance, but engineer quality assurance. These are people who look at the quality of the engineers and suggest things that they should do better. So they're going to randomly pick a couple of cases for each engineer, take a look at their written responses. Were they well written? Was it a correct answer? Things like that. We also tape all our incoming phone calls. So they'll randomly pick a couple of phone calls and they'll go through, did the person introduce themselves properly? Did they get a case number to the customer? All the standard things that you're supposed to do in support. So that's quality, and that gets feedback to the engineers so that they can improve in their jobs and what they're doing. Again, our quality engineers usually have gone through the L1 entry position. Training, I talked about the 12 weeks that an L1 gets training. Well, somebody has to do that. So new employees go through that 12-week training, and then the trainers are usually ex-L1s as well. So I can't say that enough. Everybody goes through L1. Knowledge management. Sorry, I lost the slide. There we go. Knowledge management. These are people who write articles, how-tos, so that our engineers, our customers, our partners can just read a page if they have a question sometimes. And that's all the information they need. They don't need to call us up. They're all accessible externally, whether it be through the community or on other pages. And they're all accessible by our support team as well. So that's kind of an overview of what we have in the support team. There's other technical departments. So we talk about managed threat and response, malware remediation. These are people managing and acting on customers' networks and endpoints for the customer. This includes rapid response that I talked about. So again, if there's ransomware, we can get in there and get it out and clean it up. Sales engineers, another technical position. These people help the sales team. They're technical people who answer technical questions that maybe the sales team can't answer. They help set up demos or proof of concepts for customers. So sales engineers, another technical thing. Again, a lot of our sales engineers have come through support. Development and QA. This is not customer-facing role. One of the few non-customer facing roles that I've talked about so far. Someone has to develop our software and the quality assurance of that software. So this is a different quality than the other quality I was talking about. Product management. This is about product offering and functionality. Usually I wouldn't call that a technical department, but in cybersecurity, you need to know your stuff technically in order to be in product management. Professional services, talked about that before. It's the consulting side of things, initial setups, best practices along those lines. IT service desk engineers. We need our own IT, right? My laptop needs to be set up by somebody. And so we have IT service desk engineers as well. Technical trainers. So for all roles, technical trainers could be for customers or for partners, training people how to set up firewalls and things like that. There's one group I haven't talked about yet, or actually you haven't even referred to them. This is our labs team. Analysts are in there. They're reviewing submitted items. So if people got emails that they're not sure if they're good or bad, they're going to the labs team for investigation. If there's some kind of new virus, it'll go to the labs team. They'll look at it. They'll get some. How do we get around this? They keep abreast of all threats and alerts in a global cybersecurity context. They are talking to other cybersecurity companies. We all talk to each other, especially when there's so many threats out there. And so there's knowledge going back and forth between companies. This group probably is the leading edge of cybersecurity. They're experts in what they do. And this could be many of you in this competition, could be probably wanting to be doing something like that eventually. Back to Canada. There's a theme today a little bit about Ottawa. A lot of people seem to be from Ottawa. I'm actually from Montreal, but I do work out of the Ottawa office, although we don't currently have an Ottawa office. So our lease ended and we decided not to renew during the pandemic, and we decided to get a new office. So we're moving into that in another month or two, and then we'll be back in the office in Ottawa. Vancouver currently has 285 employees. Ottawa, we're 125. Nowadays, that doesn't mean they live in those cities. We hire anywhere. A lot of remote workers right now. We have people in Toronto, people in Halifax, one in Saskatoon, a couple in Edmonton. So remote working is completely viable and expected these days. The Ottawa office we're moving into, we're going to have a smaller amount of seats because we're not expecting people to be in the office that often. You can see a difference between the Vancouver office and the Ottawa office. Vancouver has a lot of those other departments, so sales, marketing, legal, HR, facilities, finance. We don't have that in Ottawa. Ottawa tech support is the largest group in that office, but we do have a few guys from sales, and we have a human resources person. So that's kind of Sophos in Canada, also one of BC's top employers in 2022. I don't normally put this slide in presentations. This is one of our recruiting slides, but I thought you might find it interesting. People in this competition, I would venture to say, check a lot of these boxes. So, this is a support recruiting slide. So what does support look for? We look for technology enthusiasts. I'm sure you guys are all technology enthusiasts. Strong critical thinking skills. I'm sure you guys all got that. Strong troubleshooting skills. Then we look, for some technical needs as well. And then since it's customer facing, strong communication skills help. And the most important is team players. We're a large organization. We're working with many, many different people. You need to work as a team in order to do what we do, which is fight cybercrime. And so that's kind of the end of my presentation. Probably went a little faster than I expected. But I'm going to open it up to questions. Let me stop sharing.
Perfect.
There we go.
We do have one question.
Yeah.
Is it difficult aligning for cyber services with such diverse companies? Like, are they harder to work with corporate culture-wise?
Can you repeat that a little bit? What?
Yeah. So is it difficult aligning your services to other cyber services? So you have such a diverse amount of clients.
Yeah.
Is it hard to cover everyone?
No, it's not really, because the products are the same no matter the size of the company, really. It's harder to engage with larger companies, obviously. They demand more, I would say, than smaller companies. But the products work the same whether you're small or large, so there's not much adjustments there. What we expect from the larger companies is that they do have more skilled employees, right? Because because they should know our products because they're deploying them themselves every day. So we usually expect a better level of knowledge in the larger companies. We also deal with MSPs, managed service providers. And so they're usually very skilled in deploying our products, et cetera, as well, and usually provide frontline support for their customers.
Okay. And are the expectations as a cybersec company the same?
Are the expectations in a cybersec company the same as other industries?
I'm gonna say yes.
I would guess yes. Yes, it is more demanding. I've been in a lot of different businesses, retail software, one of them, pharmaceutical automation support. Those are demanding, but, if something breaks, they're not going to lose a lot necessarily, right? In cybersecurity, if something is open to the public or to hackers, it can be a big, huge loss for them.
For sure. I guess, do you have any tips for any of the students who are just prepping to figure out what's next?
Yeah, so, I heard some of the questions in the other other presentations. Schooling was obviously one of them. I think that depends a little bit on what you want to do, right? My degree was in business, although I had a major in management information systems. I knew right away I wasn't going to be a programmer. I was too social for that. I wanted to talk to people. And so I kind of took that management path as I took. And it put me in different functional types of companies, which I enjoy too. I like the variety that was mentioned before. But if you're cybersecurity focused, you don't have to have university, right? But depending what you want to do, and if you want to be deep technical a long time, it's less needed, I would say. So we like people, from a lot of the tech schools who are doing, network type courses. We accept bachelors, we accept masters of engineering. A lot of them will all start at the same place. And then, if you're a deep tech kind of college person, you might go L1, L2, L3. If you're a university person, you might go L1, L2, TAM, technical account manager, kind of changing where you end up in the organization. You might end up in labs if you're really good technically and really driven to do that. So it depends, but the minimum is going to have some kind of technical education behind you.
Okay, so we also have another question for someone who's been applying for cybersecurity positions. They said that they usually don't have a very good requirement qualification list that would need to have in order to get the job. So their question is, what would be the requirements that they would need to secure such job?
So what we look for, again, this is entry-level technical support. So one is the technical side. So some sort of education, networks, setting up networks, network security, something along those lines, and that's where those technical schools are pretty good at doing those. You can finish some of those pretty quickly. The other thing we look is customer service. So if you worked at McDonald's, hey, that's good. If you're getting yelled at your job when you're a teenager, you're going to work in support pretty good if you can handle that. So we always look for some kind of customer service mixed with the technical background.
Awesome. Well, I think that might be all of our questions. Just checking. So yeah, I think so. So thank you very, very much, Jonathan, for joining us today and giving us that full spectrum of Sophos and what you all do as a company. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you for having us, Sheena, and good luck everybody for tomorrow.
Thank you. And also thank you for Sophos to being our third place award sponsor this year.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. So our final speaker for the day is coming from AWS. So Bill Olson is the Principal Security Leader at AWS Worldwide Public Sector Solution Architecture for Latin America, Canada, and the Caribbean. Bill holds a CCSP and a CISSP. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I understand my title is quite the mouthful. So again, thank you. I feel privileged to be invited, and congratulations to all the students and teams that are competing in the event. This is a very impressive effort. So I was invited to talk a little bit about my career. So as opposed to some of the other nice presentations I saw, no slides, you just get to stare at my face. And so as mentioned,
I'm currently what you call a principal security leader at AWS, and that's within solutions architecture team that covers public sector organizations across all of Canada, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Examples of public sector organizations are like the federal governments, national defense, national security agencies, provincial and local governments, healthcare like hospitals, nonprofit organizations, and even some financial organizations like credit unions, which are basically like a nonprofit version of a bank. And then for those of you who don't already know, Amazon Web Services, AWS, it's the world's most broadly adopted cloud platform. We've got, I think, north of 200 fully featured services now from data centers around the world. And we have millions of customers that use that, from startups to the largest enterprises, to, as I mentioned, to some leading government agencies. So I also noted I'm within the solutions architecture team. And in my opinion, the solution architect is one of the coolest jobs out there, particularly if you enjoy building applications and workloads. Um, so I'm oversimplifying it a bit, but basically a solution architect gets to work with the customer to help them take advantage of the cloud services available through AWS. That might be AWS native services or other tooling provided through marketplace vendors, kind of like Sophos and others. And so they could be working with the customer on something as simple as like a 3-tiered web application, or it can drift widely from related to IoT related workloads or solutions, machine learning, even game development. So it can run the gamut. And my role is twofold. So one, I get to help our customers adapt to the cloud, particularly around security. So I tend to come in when they hit a roadblock or speed bump, and how can they do something the way they were doing it? How do they do that in the cloud, security wise? Or maybe compliance related. So this is where security is a very broad subject. You've seen a number of presenters mention there's security operations, there's compliance, there's a lot of stuff. So a big part of my job is just kind of unpeeling the onion to see like what's actually going on. Is it an actual security issue in question, or is it just something else related to workflow, organizational efficiency, that kind of thing, and help solve that. And then on the other hand, I get to do that internally within AWS with our team. So if they're hitting any speed bumps with security, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do, and also help make sure that we're following the best practices that we recommend everybody else follow. So I guess that's what I'm doing now. So how did I get here? And I thought I'd frame that journey around a few themes that, in hindsight, I think have helped shape my path. The first theme being, in the context of my business professional life, I found that opportunities are often in the problem areas. So most people avoid problems, but that's effectively where organizations need your help. So if there's something going sideways in an organization or something that just isn't working right, that's often an opportunity. If you can help solve that, you may have bigger opportunity within that organization, or take that to leap somewhere else. Um, Second theme was, make the best decision you can with the information you have available. Waiting for perfect rarely works out. You wind up learning something, whether it goes correctly or not. And if you're in a good organization, this is one of the things I truly appreciate about AWS. You have a supportive culture. So, we're human. You're going to make some mistakes. And without that kind of safety net of having a chance to be wrong, no one's ever going to take a risk. And if you don't take a risk, you're never going to do some of the more uh, cool advancements because you're going to play it safe. So that's one of the ways you can find an organization you feel like you're allowed to make a risk. It's probably a good place. And then the third theme was just stay curious, keep learning. A number of people made the point that career path isn't necessarily as straightforward as you might like. It'd be amazing if there's a little checklist of, if I do these 4 things, I'm going to have a role like Bill's. That's generally not the case. You kind of pick up, learn things along the way. How can you apply this skill to your next job or role? Or even you might just be interested in learning something, and then that sits with you for a while, and suddenly it becomes relevant. 2-3 years down the road. So I definitely you know keep your mind open, stay flexible. Things change very quickly, particularly in technology. I think Jonathan just mentioned, but I'm on the older end of the spectrum as well. So I could not have, even if I put the thought into it when I was your age, I would not have been able to envision the job I have now, because it didn't exist. Even AWS itself has only been around since 2006. So while we've done a lot, there's still a tremendous amount out there. I think one of the statistics people like to quote is of all the IT potential workloads that could move to the cloud, there's only been about 10% of them that have. So there's still a lot of opportunity out there as far as the world I work in. Um, so let me give you a couple of examples from my career that why those themes are relevant. So to that point about opportunities and problems, in my first what I call real job after university, I had effectively had some sort of part time or similar job since I was in I think probably like sixth grade. Paper routes, work at a golf course, clean swimming pools, grocery stores, all that kind of stuff. But my first real job with a manufacturing company. And as ancient as I may be, when I walked into that place as a 22 22-year-old, I was shocked at how archaic it was. It was like I stepped into the 1950s. There's people walking around with ties and short sleeve shirts. Every Monday, there's somebody that would walk around in this cart that was just overloaded with paper printouts of a report. And my job at the time was what they call an inventory manager. So it's basically tracking our product from raw materials through to various locations it went to around the world until it was finished product. So you'd have that giant printout piece of paper slam on your desk on Monday, and you basically just kind of comb through it for the stuff that you're tracking. Try to figure out from that point in time, once a week, where everything was. Is it where it's supposed to be? And then spend the rest of the week basically calling places around the world, saying, "Hey, why is this here? Or are you ready for this stuff to come?" It was kind of, in my mind, a little crazy, but that's how it had been done forever. That's how they did it. It seemed to work, whatnot. So in finding an opportunity in that problem, I wanted to make my life a little easier, but also it's just as I mentioned, it didn't make sense to me. There's got to be a better way to do this. In talking to all these people, where's my stuff? What are you doing? I learned that a lot of these locations, the plants, they reported their status every single day. Even though I'm getting a report once a week, there's got to be data out there. So somewhere this data is going, and somewhere this once a week report is getting printed out, and there's got to be somebody that knows some of the mystery behind that. So I was fortunate I was able to find that person. That person was more than willing to talk to me about what they have, how it works, and also give me access so I could set up a simple database with a digital interface so I could recreate that report, but I could have that up to date data. So I could have an up to date version of that Monday report every day. And I was able to share it with my peers and saved a tremendous amount of time so we could focus on other things where other places we can benefit. So, in making my life a little bit easier, I found an opportunity and I was able to leverage that opportunity to actually, that was my transition into technology. So, I left that manufacturing company, went to a technology company, and I didn't have a deep technical background. I was basically hired to do very similar to what I had just done at that company, take a bunch of different data sources, group them in some way so that our team could make informed decisions about the product they were selling at the time. And so that there's a combination there of the find an opportunity and a problem, but also where can I where can I find a role? Like I definitely was intrigued with this technology stuff. I didn't have the background, but there's a lot of other roles within technology that aren't necessarily coding or hacking, what have you. And I found that project management actually suited me pretty well. I was kind of curious, interested in a lot of things, and it allowed me to play a role to help others accomplish a task. And so I was able to do that through a few successive companies, learning skills along the way. So going from one technology company to another, so you start learning about developing different types of applications. What are the different tools out there? Coding languages, options, that kind of stuff. And you start building up that experience. It was a great opportunity for me. Unfortunately, in technology, as I mentioned, it keeps changing. So if you're open to that change, you can keep learning. You can keep using that to your advantage to find new opportunities. And my transition, excuse me, to information security occurred at a company I was working at, a financial software company that catered to investment banks. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with investment banks like the Goldman Sachs's and Morgan Stanley's of the world, but these are the companies where if you ever hear about, like a Facebook-sized company having an IPO, these are the banks behind those things, and so they would use our workflow product at this company to manage those kind of offerings. And to use that kind of offering, there's quite a bit of integration, a lot of data flying back and forth, and not too surprisingly, banks are very concerned about what you're doing with your data. Why do you need this? What are you doing with it? How you're protecting it? And I was running a team that helped these clients roll out this product. So walking them through these integration points, answering those kind of questions, we became very good at it. So not too long, it didn't take too long for our company to say, "Hey, Bill, you and your team are doing a fantastic job answering these questions. Can you also make sure that we're doing the proper thing internally?" And that's where I had the switch to information security. And at the time, I was kind of thinking like, "Oh, that doesn't sound all that fun." But as I dug into it, it became pretty cool. There's kind of the headline grabbing stuff of like attacking. I think that a couple other people mentioned like how they're doing pen testing, that kind of thing. But it kind of runs the gamut of you get to put your nose in everything, how an organization operates, who should have access to what kind of data is out there, how are you using it, are we using it in the correct ways, what's a better way to build an application, or even as the cloud came about, how do we take advantage of these new technologies out there? And security is kind of there entirely. So that was my transition. I was fortunate enough that that started working out well. I had roles like a chief information security officer at that one company. I was able to switch to another company as we decided to move up to Canada. Um, and that company was interesting because, again, goes back to like there's a problem. We'd like people to solve it. I switched to a large company, or at least what I thought was large at the time was north of 10,000 people or so. And one of the things as you get into the work world, you'll see that organizations are all over the place. Sometimes it's a new company and everything's kind of as you would expect it, or sometimes it's like what I mentioned is that first job. It's archaic. It's like, how does this still exist this way? And this new 10,000 person company was a little mix of the both. It had grown through mergers and acquisitions. So on the surface, it's one big shiny company with a lot of cool products. But behind the scenes, it's a lot of different siloed enterprises. Kind of if they bought a company in the United States and one in Portugal, they're still running independently. So it's very hard to have a cohesive um, uh, lens into how our security situation is because everybody's doing something different. Nothing's integrated, all that kind of thing. So it was a huge challenge. And it was also an industry that was heavily regulated by some governments. So we would be quizzed a few times a year by these government agencies about how we're doing this or that. And we actually had to do quite a bit of work to present that we've got a good plan. We're executing against that plan. And we will be able to resolve some of these issues. And I found that that project management background I had really helps in information security because more often than not, you'll find the security team rarely can do anything independently. It's all tied to working together with others. Whether that's HR, legal, development, some form of IT operations, system administration. In order for anything to happen, you've got to work with others. So even though project management isn't typically touted as a way into cybersecurity, I think it's actually one of the greatest skills. If you can pick that up along the way, you can have a much bigger impact in cybersecurity than often if you were just a single role contributor. So anyway, that was that large bank or financial firm was my entry into information security full time. I enjoyed that. We were able to help them meet the obligations of those regulators. But the draw of there's got to be another way to do this came about. So I had an opportunity to join a startup, which was primarily a chance to have a greenfield. So if you have somebody come to you and it's like, hey, if you could start over and do it um, how you would do it, it's a pretty enticing opportunity. So I had a chance to do that. I had a hypothesis in my mind from working at these other organizations that, if I started from scratch, I would do security a certain way. A lot of that revolved around just, I didn't want anything in the office other than internet connection. I want people to be able to go to the office, kind of like a coffee shop, and connect to internet, they can talk to each other, work things out, but everything would be off in the cloud as much as possible, which is why AWS became an opportunity a couple years later. I felt like I did a nice job at that startup, but the allure of AWS was too much for me to resist. So I I combed their job listings, found one that seemed suitable, and was fortunate enough to get picked up and work through the interview process, and was able to join you know, about a year ago or so, and it's kind of been everything I've hoped for. So I mentioned that the top of the talk had a few themes that resonated in hindsight, and part of why I found that AWS matched the kind of organization I want to work with is they have what they call leadership principles. I think a few of the previous speakers mentioned, mission statements, that kind of thing. AWS and Amazon call those leadership principles, and they actually use them. A lot of people have mission statements, they put it on the wall, no one ever talks about them. Within Amazon and AWS, it's almost brought up in every meeting, using those for, are we doing the right thing? And so my themes aligned very nicely with a few of those, and some of my favorite ones, which are like invent and simplify, a bias for action, and have backbone, disagree and commit. And that third one was really resonated with me because it's one of the hardest things to do in an organization. There's ideas, there's disagreement. You need to have the courage to speak up, ask the questions, make sure your opinion's heard, hear the others. But at that point that a decision's made, whether through consensus or maybe there's a set of options that the customer chose, you need to commit. So, hey, we had our discussion. This is the outcome, and now we're a team and commit and move forward. Um, that was almost 70% of what I did in any of those project management roles was just organizing people to understand, here's what we're trying to do, here are the options, what are we going to do? And people, weren't always happy with the choices, but if they didn't commit as a team, we'd often, that'd be a bigger challenge than if, all right, fine, I get why we're here. That's what it's going to be. We're going to move forward and get it done. So that's kind of a long-winded, rambling backdrop to my career. I'm happy to take any questions if you guys have any.
Sure, we do have a couple.
Fantastic.
So first off, AWS is such a massive part of the cloud computing market. Can you tell us where it's going to evolve next in like the next 5 years or so when these students are graduating post-secondary?
I mean, it's, in my opinion, it's going to be more of the same. So I mentioned we've got over 200 services. So within AWS, a service is an offering. So if you log into a management console, there's a whole bunch of services there that you can take advantage of, whether that's different database offerings, different types of compute or storage, or as I mentioned, there's you can leverage some machine learning options, IoT, and I mean, I can't even name them all. On the game development, there's over 200. So I think it's just going to be more of the same. And one of the cool things I found about AWS is that about 90 some odd percent of our roadmap comes from what customers are asking. It's not just AWS thinking up like, you know what, we need another database offering. It's feedback from our customers. Focus on that. So there'll be more and more people using that. I mean, I mentioned that I jumped from a large financial institution to a startup. And part of that was to take advantage of the cloud because it's so much easier to spin up and configure, test. If we did it wrong, delete it all, start over, than some of the traditional long tail, like a big company like that, the previous one had, where they put massive amount of money into their own data centers, equipment, and it's very hard for them to give that up, even though they can't pivot and change. It's really difficult. So to answer the question, I think it's going to be a lot more of the same. And I noted that only about 10% of the market has moved to the cloud. So I think there's a huge amount of shift that's going to happen. And anybody like any of the students that start to understand and play with AWS, you're going to have an opportunity to help that shift.
For sure. So I guess kind of on that, you were saying 10% have only moved. So is there anything, it's like, what should companies, students, people in general consider security-wise before migrating information to the cloud?
That we could be on that for a while.
There, yeah.
Yeah.
High level.
Yeah, high level. I mean, there's two primary things I always emphasize in most of the talks I give to the customers. The one is follow a security standard like the NIST CSF, ITSG 33 in Canada. There's industry frameworks all around the world. And more importantly than just following that, because some, obviously a government might be regulated to follow it. Private business kind of has a choice. But more than following that, find a mechanism to to communicate and assess that. So if you use that standard, you create that kind of proverbial list of here's all the things we should be doing. Find a way to assess that. I've seen it done as simple as a spreadsheet with a range of 0 to 10. 0, we don't know what that is. 10, we're so good at it we should be selling it. And you're gonna fall somewhere in between there. So you can very quickly get to a point where I've got a bar chart of hey, here's where we're supposed to be on these things. This is where we are, and that gap creates those conversations within your organization with all your stakeholders, the teams involved. Hey, why are we only there? Maybe we didn't understand something when we did the assessment. We'll correct it, iterate through it, or it's highlighting the problems, and you can use that to prioritize, get everybody on board. Everybody starts to understand what's at stake there, because I mentioned that security can rarely do anything on their own. So if you get a good mechanism to communicate the state of the program, what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, it really creates a lot of support within the organization. And the second thing I always highlight is AWS and the other cloud providers have a concept of a shared responsibility model. And this is when you're using AWS will be responsible for security of the cloud. You as a customer are responsible for that security in the cloud, meaning you have to do certain practices like not leave every port open to the public so that you're doing the right things. But the important part about that is just besides that, there's stuff AWS does and stuff that customers do. That line between the two is not static. There's a lot of choice in there. So depending on which services you use, whether they're more managed services or not, you can move that line. So if you've going back to that first point, if you have a good understanding about what your organization is doing well or not doing well, when you're moving to the cloud, you can take advantage of like if we are really bad at patching in a timely manner, let's not patch. Let's choose services so that AWS or Google or Microsoft takes care of that part, and we can focus more on the stuff that we're doing. So those are the two things that I always emphasize, because then from there you start talking about just security best practices, and there's quite a range of those. And I think most cloud providers have tools to help that, because you know even though it's only 10%, these questions have been asked before, and so there's a lot of reference material, resources available that like, hey, yeah, so if government X is doing this, you can do it too. Here's how they got started. So there's a lot of resources out there.
And I guess for AWS as a company, are you finding more of the jobs that you're hiring are more on a virtual level, or do you have offices across, countries, et cetera? And kind of where are you located in general?
I'm personally located in Toronto, Ontario. So I actually joined virtually. So the first time I actually went to a AWS office wasn't even the office I would be, quote unquote, assigned to. It was for an event, meeting some of the other people on my team. And so AWS has for the most part, it varies by job, but overall, you kind of work where you're comfortable. If you want to work at home, that's fine. If you're close to an office, you can go in there however you need to. It basically just shifts on, what's the best way to get your work done. So if your team's meeting for a few days to talk through a project, it'd be great to go and do that in person. Fantastic. So I think it's a mix. There's a lot of remote only. It's certainly an option, especially over the last couple of years. Very comfortable with that. And then there's another part where it can be remote, but they like to be within an area. So if we're hiring somebody who's going to be working with Canadian federal government, sometimes we like those within relatively easy reach of Ottawa. You don't necessarily have to travel from Australia to get to Ottawa. So there's some balance there.
Yeah, fair enough. And then another question, are there cloud certifications that AWS especially values? So it'd be when you were hiring.
It again, and I'm sorry, I'm the typical security person where everything starts with it depends, and this would probably depend on the role. There are some obviously AWS specific certifications out there that those are very helpful. And when you join AWS, particularly in solutions architecture, some of those start to become requirements. So as you're going through your onboarding through your first 6 months or year or whatnot, you'll start to accumulate a lot of those certifications there. But I think the most important thing that AWS looks at, certainly in their interview or hiring process, is your ability to learn, like how curious you are. You can demonstrate that your ability to learn new things. And I'm not stating this correctly. I'm sorry, I've lost my words.
No, it makes sense.
But it's kind of I think it gets attributed, I think, like the U.S. Navy SEALs, where they would rather hire kind of a mid-level person they trust versus some outstanding person that can do everything. And that's kind of the same principle here. It's like, this person seems very capable. We can teach them some of that technical aspect, like those certification things. Also, every company is going to have a different set of tools, so there's some expectation that you're going to have to learn whatever tools that company use.
Awesome. I guess kind of finish it up on a similar topic, I'm assuming. But what would be the number one piece of advice you would give to an aspiring cybersecurity professional?
I would say just be open-minded. Like, try a number of different things. I don't think there's any set path. So incident response can be amazing. Security operations, project management. We had, I think actually our CISO at AWS was speaking the other day, and he's just like, just get a job in cybersecurity. There's a lot. Like, I mean, someone mentioned like even HR. There's roles that support cybersecurity that aren't necessarily labeled cybersecurity. Get in some place, see what you like, see what you don't like, and take it from there.
Awesome. Well, I think that might be all of our questions.
Okay.
So thank you very, very much for
Thank you.
joining us.
No, thank you for listening to me talk about myself. I appreciate
That
it.
was great. Great career information for sure.
All right. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. All right. So, and that is the end for our speakers for today. So I just want to thank everyone again for joining us, both virtually and being able to come and speak to us. Super information. It was just fantastic overall. So tomorrow will be the last day for CyberTitan 5, and that will be our award celebration. So we're going to have 2 presentations for the students in the morning, and everyone, not just students. And then our announcement of our Defender of the Year and our top 3 teams. So all of that will be starting tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. So I'll see you all then. Have a good night. Thank you.